everyone. Looks like we are going live on YouTube. Thanks for being here, Steve.
Sure.
Nirvana for hosting the awesome platform, and Cheshire for holding down the fort for the last 2 minutes while I got the last teeny bits of the show ready.
Oh, I've been holding down the fort for hours, fighting with Steve on Hangouts.
Just have you communicate. Do you have a link for the YouTube channel, and I'll put it out there?
Oh, thanks. It's in self-promotion in this server.
I see it.
Yeah, I tried to make the server look interesting and appealing to I'm a Gen Zer, so put a bunch of emojis around everything, so pretty self-explanatory where everything is, I guess.
To Twitter we go.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, Jen. I am going to mute myself for a bit or hop into the audience. I might hop back in, my situation right now. So I appreciate y'all again. If there's anybody, I guess, that wants to ask Mr. Steve McRae or anybody up here a question, well, more so Steve McRae because it's called Steve McRae AMA.
Yes, sir. Moral support. I take her everywhere I go. It's like a handbag, just like a Louis Vuitton. Just kind of looks good.
I mean, I'm small enough to fit in a handbag.
Yeah, she gets checked on for actually. She doesn't even buy a plane ticket. She's like carry on luggage.
That's basically Jen. I guess. Point.
I'm sorry, everyone. That link is a false alarm. For some reason, there's something wrong with my streaming software right now. Don't share that link. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to give you a new link.
Okay,
my bad.
I'll delete that one.
Do it again. Round 2. Electric Boogaloo.
Let's just chit chat for a few minutes, then I'll double check the link. And
Steve, I'm gonna need you to do me a favor and delete my tweet for me. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, okay. You know what? Fiona has a way of doing that, supposedly.
Okay, well, get on that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll call her right now.
Big preach. I've had people sending me that picture of a very happy looking Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
And it's like when he's carrying the beer and the chips and he's just like so happy looking. He's walking into a room. And people keep sending that to me with pictures of him from like 10, 20 years ago when he was like full himbo mode, saying that if you don't appreciate my this, then you don't deserve me at my this. And I'm like, I love him either way. He's so happy. He's bringing beer and chips. I am so content right now. My love for Brendan Fraser is entirely wholesome, and how dare anybody try to corrupt that?
It's pure and innocent.
It is.
Does anybody have any questions for Steve McRae?
Just waiting for the link.
Oh, okay, that's right. Sorry.
It's in self-promo. It's supposed to be in self-promo, right? That's where it's going to be when she gets it.
I just want to make sure and confirm I have the right link. I want to change the title because my YouTube account. I've got to check if something's wrong with it. My bad. I shouldn't be too much longer, but
Steve,
hey, Cheshire, they have Randolph in the group.
Goody.
Oh, goody.
Maybe you'll have maybe I've got a question for him. Is he going to be doing an AMA?
Yeah, that'd be fun because he gives away free slushies with every
I want to know.
That gets converted, right?
I want to know where my free 7-Eleven Slurpee is.
Right.
Steve, you tweeted out 5 minutes ago that you updated the time to 5 p.m. Eastern, but you linked to the reactor one, not to the new one.
Oh, I suck.
Leave it. Just leave it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever.
Just tweet.
Nobody pays it. Yeah, exactly. Nobody pays attention to those until it gets closer. Anyways, I am the world's worst at social media.
No, you're not the worst. I've seen worse, but you're not great.
I'm not great. Well, I'm well aware of this though. At least
I'm going to use self-aware.
Yes, I'm self-aware and I don't overestimate my inabilities.
I'm going to take the opportunity to grab a fresh beer because I was not prepared for this. Give me a minute. I'll mute.
She was not prepared. She doesn't do these very often. Although she lives on Discord, but whatever.
Do you have a Discord group that you use, Steve?
I have 2. I have the Great Debate Community, and then I have a friend, Surgeon General, who's making a new one for the Non Sequitur show as we speak.
Oh, sick. Yeah, if you want to drop the links to those in self promo, I'm sure we get a lot of members that join.
When they get going.
Okay, sure thing.
I'm under legend. That's
Yeah, I have a.
But
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I created that role whenever like somebody super well known in the community will like hop in. Uh, I give them the legend role and like they get a like special golden name.
I don't even know what communities I'm supposedly in. I just do my thing. But
Yep.
yeah, Randolph and I butt heads because he's just he's so fundamentalist and doesn't even remotely give a shit whether what he says is true or not. And I just find that distasteful. I'm like, especially when you claim to be some kind of leader of an organization, but he's like he's the only one in the organization that we can find, and his headquarters is literally the address for 7-Eleven.
Are you talking about Randolph?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of a questionable.
There's a
ethics
couple.
there.
Well, the question is that so I'm pretty sure from my understanding of the terms of service of PO boxes, you're not allowed to have like businesses stacked like that because it's not just his atheist business that's there. There's like 3 other businesses that use the same PO box that are all also owned by him. One of them is like a software development or like a web servicey type thing. There's another one that I can't remember. And interestingly enough, a little bit of digging revealed that the same PO address is used by like a UFO group that is like, we're trying to get recognized as intergalaxy talking with aliens. And it's like, what? How do I know that my money that I'm trying to give to atheist causes in Canada, which by the way, they haven't been active in for over 2 years. They haven't done anything. They don't say where your money is going. They're asking for membership to a company and donations to a company, but there's no listing on the website about what you actually get for that membership. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I would be happy to ask him those kind of questions.
I mean, I think that's fair to ask him about his group.
I was going to. I was going to have him on my show, remember? But he checked it out, and then he went personal and tried to attack me and ad hoc me. And
well, I mean, he says that I'm apparently pro-infanticide or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pro-rape, according to Randolph. Yeah, like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. You don't want to talk to me about philosophy because somehow you are trying to make me into pro-rape. Who the hell's pro-rape? I mean, that's just asinine stupid.
I'm just confused by, like, what?
Well, I mean, he's just trying to get out of the conversation because he knows I'm going to ask him difficult questions.
Well, I mean, he lied about the interaction. I mean, I still have the screenshots of that. But even besides that, I just don't understand why him and because there's another person. Oh, Canadian Atheist Podcast is another one that's listed, and I don't understand why like people would not be willing or want like desire to answer questions about their cause or about their group because that's a chance to like inform people and get your message out there, right? And I wasn't rude about the questions I had asked, but I don't know. It was just a strange interaction, and like people just kind of some people that I mean, I suspected it, but I don't think people would suspect were kind of weirdly hostile about it. It was bizarre. So weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
By the way, hi to Rez. He's listening. Hi, Rez, my buddy.
Hi, Rez.
Oh yeah, by the way, guys, the link should be in general chat now.
Okay.
Yep.
It's in self promotion.
Oh, my bad. I tried putting it in self promo and then it didn't show up. And I thought maybe there was like a spam bot because Nirvana's got all these bots on the server. So I said, okay, I'll put it in general. Forget it.
I'm so
We're
bad.
already 11 minutes behind. My bad.
I'm so bad at Discord. So just blame me because I suck at this stuff. I see it in general.
I'm already in there. I see live chat. Hello, live chat. I see you.
Awesome. I feel so famous now.
Hi all, we're out there. All right, I tweeted it out and we're live on YouTube. I take it.
Thank you so much. I'm Jen, Church of Entropy channel owner. Please sub to the channel. We got lots of fun topics like quantum mechanics and consciousness, just things that people are dying to talk about at all times. So, with that, would you like to start the AMA, Steve?
Sure. I'm Steve McRae, and I guess I'm going to be here for an AMA where people can ask me questions. I'll try to answer the best I can, and if I can't answer them properly, I'll at least make it funny.
Sounds like a plan. The first question I've got here is from Free Words, which is just asking what your field of work is.
Right now, I primarily do YouTube videos. I'm working on the Non Sequitur show. I have some other projects I'm kind of working on. I did have a seasonal job, but I'm changing that, so I'm in the middle of things. But I'm not going to tell people where that was for obvious reasons, because I don't need people calling, my actual, job kind of thing. So, but yeah, my history. I was a naval nuclear reactor mechanic for the Navy. I went through Naval Nuclear Power School. I did that for 6 years, got out, and then went into retail. I was a operations manager for Big Lots, a store manager for Radio Shack for about 6 years, service manager for Kohl's for 7 years, manager for Circuit City. And that's basically it. But then I got into philosophy and kind of been doing that for the last, 7 some odd years.
Nice. I seem to recall we had a chance to talk on your channel. That was a lot of fun.
I like having people on my channel. It's kind of a different kind of setting. A lot of these channels, they're a lot more hostile than they kind of need to be. And I'm not saying that I haven't had that before. I mean, clearly it's YouTube. Some hostility is going to happen. We've had guests come on that we started one way, but for some reason they went south. And it's just no recovery. But we do try to have congenial conversations talking about various topics that some of them can be controversial, some of them are controversial, and can be volatile, but we want to try to talk about them in ways that are not from the emotional visceral reactions, but from the actual effects of the topic on society or the why people hold particular beliefs that they hold.
One topic I've heard you go into before is this notion of ideological inheritance vis-a-vis atheism. Like, you're an atheist, does that entail anything with regards to perhaps other beliefs? So I was wondering if maybe you could comment on that, or perhaps if your opinions on that had evolved throughout the years of your work in this field. How?
Yeah, well, I kind of subscribe to like the Quine thesis that things don't exist in a vacuum. Beliefs don't exist in a vacuum either, and even withholding affirmations, even if not accepting certain things, none of this exists in a vacuum. They're all entailed by other beliefs. This is the foundation for what coherentism is about, which is that your beliefs are predicated upon other beliefs, and even to a degree, foundationalism, where you have properly basic beliefs, then you draw upon that for dosastic inference. So when you have an atheist that says, atheism is only one thing, regardless of what that one thing is, it's obviously not, because it's polysemous and it could be many things. But they seem to neglect epistemic relationships between their reasoning why they either believe God does not exist or withhold affirmation is involved with other relationships. Like if I say God doesn't exist, I have to have some belief of what a concept of what God is to even make a judgment for that, right? So everything that we do has other relationships to things. Like if I say God doesn't exist, and I automatically kind of discount that God created the earth, right? Because that's an epistemic entailment. If I say there is no God, then I'm kind of beholden to say, well, then there's no God that created the earth. Doesn't mean something else couldn't, but I mean, there is a relationship there. So beliefs do have other relationships to other beliefs that kind of have this web of coherency. Does that make sense?
I think so. Are you saying that beliefs aren't independent of other beliefs and that there's some connection between them?
Yeah, they don't exist in a vacuum. Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, what belief is not predicated upon other beliefs or some kind of assumptions, right? I mean, we all have even assumptions that I'm talking to you is somewhat of an assumption that there's a reality to be had. And if I don't have a basis for those things, if I don't say, look, I have to make certain fundamental assumptions that cannot be demonstrated, that not can be proven, cannot be even rationally justified, then I can't even begin to formulate any other rational beliefs that are predicated upon that. So if I say that God exists, or if I say God does not exist, that has to be predicated upon certain assumptions, which are called properly basic beliefs for a reason. So yeah, every belief I think has some kind of implicature to some other belief because you have certain assumptions that you just have to make.
Would that be some type of relationalism?
Well, I mean, there is something called relational logic, but I don't think that's kind of what you're referring to. I mean, relational logic would basically be when you have propositional logic, like P implies Q, any being a relationship between them. It just means the property, the truth value of those propositions. That's the only thing it cares about. Is P true? Is Q2 true for the conditional? And so relationship logic kind of says, oh, there kind of needs to be some kind of relationship between them. I'm more talking about epistemic implications. I don't even want to say entailments because they're not really entailments. They're just basically implications that if you believe something that is going to have some kind of implication that it forces you to rationally believe something else, right? So if I say, I believe there are no gods, it kind of forces me to say, I also believe that no God created the earth because there's an implication there. It would make no sense to be rationally committed to, oh, there is no God, but God created the earth. That would be a contradiction.
Yeah, I guess that is.
Just right. You agree? Just right. I agree.
Hi, hello, I'm here. I don't know why. Apparently, I'm here for moral support.
I have to clear everything for her to make sure that I'm correct in my philosophical understandings.
Oh yeah.
By the way, this is my partner, Jeshar. She's my co-host on the Non Sequitur Show.
Hello. I mean, we don't, as the type of being that we are in the existence that we exist in, yeah, things beget other things. That's kind of like just inherently the reality that we're forced to assume and live in. So even if you were going to go full solipsism, which never go full solipsism, you're still, we have to deal with the hand we're dealt. And so in the hand that we're dealt, we're social creatures, we live in a society. One thing leads to another thing, and pretty much everything, especially given how there is an evolution of society itself and society's belief systems and how that changes over time and evolves over time. Everything that you know and assume is pretty much wrapped up in everything that everybody else knows and assumes in like a big messy ball of knotted yarn.
It's coherentism.
Yeah.
Web of beliefs.
Pretty much, yeah, and there's not really any way to get around that besides flat out denial, I guess. Again, or if you're gonna go like again full on solipsism, but never go full solipsism.
Or dosastic nihilism, where there are people out there that just say, "Look, we don't have beliefs," but that makes absolutely no sense. Those people are incoherent to me.
Yeah, I don't know how it's like the I believe that both this is true and this is true at the same time. It falls into category 4, which doesn't apply to rationality.
We actually have some text questions. Awesome.
Sure.
What if you believe in dead gods? I mean, I don't know what kind of question this is for an atheist, but all right.
Well, I mean, there could be no, actually, this is an actually interesting question. There are some deist perspectives, like pandeism, where there was a creator being that whether he created the universe for aesthetics, or he created it just to have company, or whatever he created the universe for. But there are some theories that the universe creation was the God becoming the universe. So the universe was the manifestation of this God, in some cases, literally dying and becoming the universe, where the after effect, where the remnants, where the death of that particular God. Now, it's for an atheist to say, look, there are no gods. Would that qualify for a God that at one time existed? Now, in my schema, the way I do it, again, people can have different schemas. There is no one size fits all, right? Because you have global atheism, you have local atheism, you have, weak atheism, you have strong atheism. You can have a lot of different kinds of schemas. But in my particular schema, when I say a theist and atheist, I am talking about not just as a God exists, but I will also include a God ever existed. To me, somebody who says there was a God, that God died, became the universe, whether in pandeism or pantheism, or there's other types of weird relationships, which I can't even pronounce some of them. But some of them are pretty popular, actually. That to me, that's going to go under, to me, the heading theism. Because theism to me is not just a personalized God, it is under the non-classical schema, which is just any being at any time that ever existed, I'm going to say that person is still a form of theist for my argumentation. There are obviously nuances in there, and when you get into the nuances, and things will change. But as far as my arguments, when I'm talking about a theist, it would include anybody that believed in a dead God as well.
I feel like that's kind of a situation though where why I mean, I guess there's a difference between belief and worship, right? You could believe in something and not worship it. And so
Yeah, and is God
I
even worthy of worship, right? That's actually a great question. Is God worthy of worship? So a theist who says there's a God but he's not worthy of worship, I'm still going to place under a theist, because to me it's about the belief. And as somebody who likes epistemology, I care more about the belief than anything else. So if he
I mean, yeah,
believes that God exists, then that's theism to me.
that's the adjacent corner or adjacent position I would take if any of the Western, like the standard Western religions, God that was demonstrated to be like, no, this is real, it exists, it's running around smiting people. I'd be like, and I'm not gonna worship you.
Right,
You're a
right.
dick.
Right, but I mean, at that point, if I believed like there some kind of Vishnu or Hindu god that was, a god of chaos, and I believe that God existed, I would say, yeah, I'm a theist that believes that God, but I don't worship that particular God because that God is not worthy of my worship. But and then again, I think that if a lot of people said, well, if God in the Yahweh, if God in the biblical tradition, the Abrahamic God existed, I would withhold worship. But I think a lot of them are probably lip service, because that particular God would be so, I think, kind of cruel in a lot of ways, that it would be one of those things that what moral high ground would you take to spend eternity in hell where nobody gave a crap? You have no, I mean, sure, you have a moral standing that you're not worshiping an evil being, but are you really making a moral claim when you're going to spend eternity in hell for that? I think a lot of them would be in fear and go, yeah, you are an evil God, but if you demand worship from me, I'm going to do it anyways. Because we do that in society, right? We have dictators that people know are dictators, but they still follow them out of fear. I don't see there'd be any reason for a metaphysical relationship between a God that you can say, yeah, this God is not a great God, but sure, I'm scared of hell, death of it. And what moral sacrifice am I making by saying, okay, I'm going to worship you, rather than, okay, an eternity in hell where nobody even knows who cares about you and you've made no difference whatsoever. I think it's a lot of lip service when people say, yeah, if the God of the Bible existed, I wouldn't worship him. I'd take my damnation. I mean, no, but you're gonna be freaking scared to death of such a being. I know I would.
I mean, being scared of something doesn't mean you're not going to be obstinate in front of it. People are dumb.
Sure. Oh yeah.
So
we got 3 people visiting the panel. I thought maybe we could go over to Bacon Hawk's role. Did you have a question for the guest?
Oh, I was going to ask him mainly what his philosophical positions were. But I also want to say that I think some people mainly say that because their objection is because they're making the objection that God is a moral monster. Whether or not they'd actually do that in a practical sense, in the real world.
Unfortunately, we lost Steve.
All right, sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Discord and me don't get along. All right, so you were
Did
talking.
Did you hear the question though?
Yes, I did.
Okay, awesome.
So he was talking about God being a moral monster, right?
Yeah. So I think people say that they wouldn't worship an evil God and I think that people say that more as an argument that God is a moral monster.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. Yeah, I think that a lot of people do make the argument, if the biblical God, the way is portrayed by some Christians, I'm not going to say all, there are variations, obviously, so I'm not trying to do a fallacy of a general type of a Christian deity, but there are some Christians out there that do make God out to be a very moral monster. The Old Testament God and the New Testament God seem to be very dissimilar. And when you have Christians tell me, well, believe like me or you're going to go to hell, and then I tell them, look, that particular God that you're worshiping is using a fallacy called argumentum ad baculum. And if you're going to have a God that you claim is that powerful, that uses fallacies, I'm going to probably say that God is a moral monster and not worthy of worship. Though that doesn't mean that I wouldn't do it, because again, you're scared to death of that particular creature. But you have to. We I think still make moral proclamations and moral judgments, even if it's a divine being, to say, hey, this God he's kind of being a dick, man. But I mean, you're still going to probably end up worshiping him. But yeah, I think there's a good case to be made that certain variations of the Christian God are a moral monster. Yes.
Would you say that if the Old Testament God did exist, that even though it would be imprudent to not worship him, that you would be morally compelled to not worship him?
I think that you would be morally compelled to under certain types of moral frameworks, but there's, again, no one size fits all. I mean, what's the moral gain by you withhold worshiping if there's nothing to be gained by everybody else withholding worship and everybody goes to hell? I mean, it seems to be a hollow victory, right? Usually when you have a moral stance, it's because you want to make change. You want to have impact. There's no change to be had there. You have a complete and utter absolute dictator that will not change. And so what's the moral high ground from doing that? And sure, now I think that the probably the middle ground would be to say, look, I recognize this is a moral monster, but I am beholden to have worship of him out of fear, out of fear of death, eternal damnation, or whatever it is. I don't find that to be a moral failing. I mean, I just don't. I think
have a moral obligation. But like, would we have a moral obligation to reject worshiping Stalin if he wanted us to worship?
Yeah, but he's not he's not somebody that can send you for eternal damnation, right? Again, if you had Stalin and you were like, I'm not going to worship this guy, I'm not going to follow his direction, it is because you want to make change. You want that country to be liberated. You don't want to have a dictator as leader. You're not going to be able to do that with some kind of omnipotent being. So I don't think there's much of a moral reasoning to withhold worship if that deity is forcing you to do it. I don't think you're having moral failing. I think the moral failing would be somebody says, yeah, that this is a very evil God and I'm worshiping him and I'm completely fine with that, and I'm going to like sit there from heaven and watch you burn in hell. Those people I find to have moral deficiencies.
Maybe I'm a romantic, but I am 100% for if there is an omnipotent evil deity out there and they decide they want to impose themselves on us, that I am 100% for. We're fighting God now. Let's go. Let's go, boys.
This isn't D&D. You're not going to magic fireball to the face of God.
I only won't know it's D&D after I'm dead and then still fighting this. The thing is nobody's ever going to die. Fight God forever. Whoop!
It's the eternal struggle, right?
Let's do it.
All right, thanks for your question. Bacon Hawks Rule will pass to Marvelous Gaspar. Did you have a question for Steve? Thanks so much for joining us. I see he's muted, so okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I don't want to make you repeat yourself. I got in here a little bit late. I don't know what you covered, but I know that you get some crap from some infighting from within the atheist group based on some of your definitions that you've adjusted. So for what purpose have you there was if I'm not mistaken, there was a point where you went from atheist to agnostic. Correct me if that's wrong.
I've never been atheist. By the way, I do remember you. Hi, Gaspar. It's been a while.
Hello. Yes.
I'm not going to block. By the way, I'm not going to block you. It's cool.
I'm sorry for everything. I apologize. Please forgive me.
All good. No, it's cool. All right. So
everyone in the audience is laughing right now.
It's so everybody's being an adult. I'm so proud.
I've been adulting. No, I mean, again, I never changed anything as far as my particular belief system until I left theism, right? As you know, I was a Mormon when I was 17. I never really was that active, but I did believe God existed for a while. But then in about 2008, I completely renounced that after Proposition 8 in California and how the church was involved trying to spend money to prevent gay marriage. And I found that to be morally atrocious. And then that's something where it would be a moral failing for me to not speak out about that. And so I was like, this cannot be the true church if they're giving money for something that I find to be morally egregious. Then after that, I was just like, yeah, it doesn't even make much sense to me to believe in a God. But I mean, there's just so many different arguments for and against. I'm like, I'm just going to keep my position as agnostic and then go from there. But I would never an atheist where I said, God doesn't exist, not ever in my life.
And so for rational purposes, you say atheism or strong atheism overreaches, right?
No, I don't think it does. No, absolutely not. I think there's a lot of people that are perfectly justified to make the claim God does not exist. The problem I find is when a lot of them make that claim, they don't know how to justify it properly. They don't meet their burden of proof because they are unable to rationally justify their position. I've had people tell me God doesn't exist because God is myth. Well, you're just begging the question at that point, right? You're not giving me any reason to say why God doesn't exist. There are very good arguments against the existence of God, like Graham Oppy's appeal to theoretical virtues is one of my favorites, or divine hiddenness, problems of evil, for example. But when I hear an atheist say, look, there are no gods, I'm going to say, well, what's your reasoning for that? And then if they justify it, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine. I think that absolutely that atheists can justify that. But again, I don't differentiate between strong atheists and weak normatively. I just do that for my arguments because people will do that just because they want atheism to be the lack of belief that God exists, right? Well, that inherently is what's coined as weak atheism by Dr. Smith, by Dr. Martin, Dr. Flew. That's known in the literature as weak atheism. So I differentiate between weak and strong only to show the problems that are inherent with that approach. Does that make sense? But I don't adopt it myself. To me, it's just atheism.
Yeah, it does. So one of the things I've noticed, well, one of the things I remember you and I would argue about, and one of the things that I noticed is common for you to argue about. One of the things that you value, it seems, is definitions, which they are paramount, of course. I want to know: do you consider yourself a nominalist, or do you really do you try to establish definitions in the reliability of the literature or something like that?
Actually, no. See, I'm not into definitions. I'm the one that's arguing definitions are. I have a fallacy that I coined. It's called argumentium ad prescriptio, which is basically saying that you cannot get a prescriptive definition out of descriptive ones, right? So when you read a dictionary, it's just telling you how the word is used. I don't think that you need to define everything to have a conversation. These are not types of arguments where you need to say, look, this word prescriptively must be used this way. What I argue is when you have somebody says the word only means this, they are absolutely fundamentally incorrect because you can show citations where the word is not being used that way, which if you have one evidence of a defeater or something, the argument fails. And so I don't think that we need to go around saying, look, these words are prescriptively used in philosophy. Now, science is a little bit different. I think there's a little bit more reasons to have a little bit more weak prescriptivism. And I do agree, say weak prescriptivism as in if you want to go read a paper correctly, you ought to use a word a certain way or not going to understand it in context. Now, that's something that Ozzy and I had really good discussion on, the difference between what we were kind of coining, the difference between weak prescriptivism versus strong prescriptivism. In that, when they say prescriptivism, people say, oh, that means that you have a word that must be used a certain way. I don't advocate that. I'm a descriptivist. But there are certain times where weak prescriptivism must be the case. If you want to understand a paper that was written in context, you have to use the words in a way that the author had used them, right? My thing is that when atheists start being very hardcore prescriptivists, that's when I have an issue. Now, as far as nominalism, I do tend to nominalism. However, again, Quine makes a very good argument for mathematical Platonism. So even though I do tend to nominalism, if that's what your question was.
Oh yeah,
I have no problem with mathematical Platonism whatsoever. I think that it actually makes sense, but I'm not familiar with mathematical Platonism enough to even make a really good cogent argument other than Quine's indispensability thesis.
Yeah, we don't have to take up too much time on the topic, but mathematical Platonism, the mere mention of it is enough to get me rioting in the streets with pitchforks and torches. But
are you against it? Are you against it?
Yeah, I tend to be non-realist on that position, but I said we don't have to hijack the whole conversation with it. But
that's the beauty with philosophical positions. I mean, there is no right answer there. It's what do you kind of want to tend to that corresponds with some of your other beliefs, right? So if somebody tends to nominalism, that's perfectly fine because it may cohere with other positions they have. While a mathematical Platonist might say, well, this coheres with me better because I need to relate mathematics to science. And Quine has a very good argument that you can't do that unless you treat these abstract objects as real. And I think he's absolutely right on that. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to take that position, though. Does that make sense? Does it kind of make sense?
Yeah. Well, I agree with what you said about philosophy at large. There's not really a right position. I think that's an important point to reach in philosophy, to not think there's a quest with a holy grail at the end of it for you to discover, but instead to see philosophy as this animal of pragmatism where instead of opening one door to walk through the next door. Many doors are open, and we might
Yes.
walk through this one time, another one another time. And so to me, this situation is at least more favorable to pragmatism and non-realism, and maybe less favorable to some like mathematical Platonism. And what I would say is that what I would say is that mathematical Platonism and various species of realism can be true within nested contexts. Let me try to explain this. Towards certain ends, but
Yeah,
maybe.
well, okay. Well, real quick. So, not to hijack it too much. You're basically just explaining what I would consider to be more of a Dewey method, like John Dewey's. He has what's called a pragmatic theory to science and to math, where I think that it kind of is entailed by almost every type of scientific methodology, and I would say even philosophy. There has to be some kind of pragmatic way to do. Like you said, inquiring to different doors. And I think that John Dewey made a very good argument for that all things somehow relate to some kind of pragmatic approach.
Yeah, so that is kind of, yeah, that's, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay.
I'm having to mute because I still have a little bit of a cough. I've been coughing because of allergies, but it's way better than now than it was. That's why I accidentally left. I hit the wrong button, but I'm drinking coffee. So I have to mute every so
What if
often.
there
So I
are two
apologize.
philosophically contradictory positions? Do you believe that they can both be true?
There are types of forms of logic called paraconsistent logic that allows for true contradictions without principle of explosion, diatheism. So in classical logic, obviously you can not have a contradiction, but in paraconsistent logic, you actually can have a true contradiction without principle of explosion.
Okay, so since you put this on the table.
Explain to Elmo.
Do you have the GIF? Do the GIF. How? Explain to Elmo.
Tell Elmo.
Okay,
Steve, since you put this on the table, I want to know. You said that you at least find mathematical Platonism possible. If you think that classical logic and one of these paraconsistent logics are, I don't know if you want to say they're true. I don't know if you want to say they're real. I say they can both be useful based on the context, so I don't have to make commitments about their reality.
Sure.
But what do you say about these two logics coexisting under a mathematical Platonist paradigm?
Well, you can have an impossible world theory too, right? I mean, so a lot of the things that go with classical logic are under the scheme of possible world semantics, but you can also have impossible world semantics where you can have things like a contradiction. So I think that still to be treated the abstract sets and the abstract things as real, I don't really have a problem with that. Again, this is how you're basically treating them, whether they have some kind of ontology or not, whether they exist in a Platonic realm of some kind as an archetype. That's completely different. I don't go into modal realism. I'm a modal anti-realist, but there are arguments that Davis made for modal realism. These contradictory counterfactual worlds do exist in some capacity as real ontological worlds. Again, I don't really subscribe to that, so I'm not ontologically committed to that. I just think, as you said, they are useful, and in order to have them be useful, it may be beneficial pragmatically to treat them as real objects, even in the abstract. But I don't have a problem with paraconsistent logic for what it's used for. I mean, for example, I wrote a blog entry on an example of a married bachelor, which is a canonical thing in classical logic that you cannot have, right? I mean, it's an inherent analytical fact in classical logic that married cannot have a married bachelor. That'd be a contradiction. So paraconsistent logic allows for nuance of that, to allow certain cases where you're in a state of dialtheism that you can have a contradiction. But again, there's a whole bunch of different logics for different things. That's why we have fuzzy logics. That's why we have intuitionist logic, and it's what you're working with, right? So I don't see a problem with mathematical Platonism in that regard. But for Cheshire's thing that she asked, there are just certain times where it's kind of helpful to think of things in a state where proposition may not be the case, where it is either true or false. It may be both, because in classical logic, you have what's called the laws of logic, and one of which, the law of non-contradiction, says the proposition can either be true, cannot be true or false at the same time. But there are arguments to be had out there. There are certain propositions that may be true and false at the same time, given certain assumptions. So you have to use any kind of logic for those things.
Like
That's the way I
could
can
be
put it, I
both
guess.
Standing in like I could be both standing and not standing in a river.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's more for like future contingents when you're talking about when Aristotle was making our argument that future contingents don't have any truth maker to them because there is no truth maker to be had to make a proposition true. So what is the truth value of a proposition? Is it, it's neither true or false there. There might be a truth gap there. But at the same token, there might be arguments for situations where instead of being neither true or false, it's both true and false, right? Because again, the law of excluded middle says it must be true or false, right? The principle of bivalence says it has to be one or the other. But when you're dealing with future contingencies, that may not be the case. You have to use a different understanding of logic with truth graphs and truth gluts. Again, I'm not a logistician, so ask a person who's really much more in logic than I am. I just do foundational stuff, very basic logic stuff.
Speaking of very basic logic stuff, do you accept the notion of a ground of being? This question coming in from Mr. Smith.
I don't think that a necessary being has fully been demonstrated to be I hate to say it, but necessary. Generally, there's three ways to approach the universe as far as why it exists, right? The Munchausen trilemma approach. It's not exactly Munchausen because it's not epistemic, but there's three ways to look at it. There's the universe has some kind of infinite regress. It has some kind of contingency, brute fact that it was predicated upon, or it has a necessary being that it was predicated upon. And that necessary being does not necessitate being a moral agent or even intelligent agent. It just means something that had to exist in all possible worlds. And that might be the case. There might actually be a necessary being, whether it be quantum fluctuations, Higgs field, 0 point energy, who the hell knows? But one, it's a far cry to say a necessary being must be an intelligence. I know there's a lot of people out there that try to make that argument, especially in the Islamic communities. But I tend to brute fact that there are certain things that might just be outside of our epistemic limit to understand. And we are a contingent universe. We are contingent beings. And that's probably predicated upon other contingent things. That doesn't seem to me to imply a necessary being. It could be. I wouldn't care if it was. Matter of fact, I'd be very interested if they can say, look, there is a necessary being. It is demonstrated through science. I'd be like, that's awesome. That's really cool, actually. And I'd be like, okay, but there's still other brute facts that we probably don't ever understand or can't understand upon a necessary being that must exist. That still doesn't get you anywhere near God. It's just the first step on that rung, right? Because you have to have a necessary being, at least in the Christian view, and then they would take the steps to get there to some kind of intelligent agency there. I think it frozen on the. By the way, I think it frozen on YouTube, but that's okay.
Is it? Oh, I'll check it out. My bad.
It comes on and off, but just let you know.
It's fine for me if you refresh, but
I will check to see if I've got anything running that I can just turn off. Oh, Quora. And
that makes that
email.
Oh, the lovely Control-Shift-Exit.
Difficult question, which got some clarification, which is whether you can say everybody knows.